So I finally saw Godzilla Minus One, and it's a great fucking movie. The human characters aren't the boring, pointless NPCs that they are in the West. No, they actually come across as likeable and compelling. Godzilla is back to where he belongs as the antagonist and unstoppable force of nature that fucks up Japan, stepping on people and blowing up cities, with no one having any idea in how to stop him. Minus One is the best Godzilla movie that has come out. I know that's not exactly a high bar, but Minus One has just set the new standard of what a Godzilla movie should be. This film absolutely destroys the shit monsterverse that Hollywood keeps churning out endlessly. It's well paced, has decent CGI, as there was only one or two scenes where it didn't look so good, but for the most part it looked great. The story has genuine stakes and great characters that we actually like. We also get to see Godzilla take damage, as usually he is invincible. His atomic breath is no longer a flamethrower that sometimes damages monsters and other times doesn't. It's way cooler as it builds up, with his spikes popping out, acting as a sort of timer, building suspense before he wipes out everyone.
Oh, God. Fantastic!
So why is this the case? How is this film so good when it's made by an unknown Japanese studio with a tiny budget of $25 million? How did they manage to make a superior monster movie than Hollywood with budgets more than 10 times that size?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Well, I can think of a few reasons for this. The first is respect. In Japan, Godzilla is much more than a generic monster movie. It's a huge part of Japanese film culture that ties directly into one of the most defining moments of the 20th century, as well as reflect the psyche of a nation that has just experienced the destruction of two of their cities by nuclear weapons. Godzilla is a representation of that unstoppable force and shows us what humans do against overwhelming power.
We are fucked.
But when Hollywood makes their version of Godzilla, all of the messages and meanings behind it are completely removed, and what we end up with is nothing more than another empty franchise to be exploited endlessly. It's why in the newest trailer for Godzilla, this gigantic monster is seen sprinting at full speed alongside Kong, who seems to be wearing some sort of infinity gauntlet.
Christ, who wrote this?
The second, of course, is greed, as everything has to be the MCU so that they can continue to milk these IPs until there is nothing left, and all of the love behind the original movie is gone. Kind of how all marriages end up.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
And because of that, you can't have a self-contained story with a beginning, middle and end. Every film has to be a setup to the next movie, so the stakes are limited in what they can be. Godzilla can't keep getting killed every movie just to come back again, as that wouldn't make him a threat anymore. So instead, he has been made the protagonist who fights against other monsters, whilst the human characters are relegated to nothing more than pointless NPCs that do fuck all except stand there and gawk at the fight. This leads me to number 3, which are of course the human characters. Minus One has decent characters with strong motivations and even a character arc.
No way! No way!
I mean, can anybody tell me anything about Millie Bobby Brown's character? She has been in 2, going on 3 Godzilla movies, and nobody can remember a fucking thing about her, as she has made zero impact on the story. Who the fuck is she, and what does she want?
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Whereas I can tell you all about Shikishima, the main character in Minus One. He is a man suffering from survivor's guilt because he was too afraid to shoot at Godzilla, and because of the guilt, he cannot move on with his life and embrace his newfound family, not until Godzilla is dead. He goes from a coward with almost nothing to live for to a man hell-bent on revenge against Godzilla. He's very easy to understand and relatable. Minus One also has a few comments on Imperial Japan and Japanese culture in general, such as the complete disregard the government has for human life, the way the culture shuns people for not dying pointlessly in combat, the way the government is willing to let people die rather than warn them about the monster that is about to attack them, all so that they can keep their power. The Japanese government is about as useful as a flaccid cock, so it ends up being a bunch of civilians that have to stop Godzilla in the final fight, which is a nice touch. The deeper meaning behind this is that when the people unite and rely on each other, not the government, is when they find the strength to overcome the metaphorical atomic bomb. So I'm going to quickly summarise the film's plot, but you really should go and watch it for yourself. The film begins with Shikishima, a kamikaze pilot that lands for repairs on a nearby island. He says that he was unable to carry out his mission because his plane was too damaged. Well, it turns out that his plane is fine, he just refused to kill himself because he promised his parents that he would come home alive. That very night, Godzilla attacks, but when he is told to get into his plane and fire at him, he understandably shits his pants and doesn't do it. Instead, he makes a run for it, and because of that, this leads to the death of almost every other man on the island. And if that wasn't bad enough, once he returns home, he finds out that both of his parents were killed in an air raid, and his family home is in ruins. Not just that, but he is hated by his neighbours for refusing to kill himself. So Shikishima is not having what you would call a good time. That begins to change when he has a chance encounter with a woman looking after an orphan girl, and reluctantly he decides to take them both in. His life starts to improve as he connects with his newfound family, and he even gets a job on a fishing boat clearing out mines from the war. Life is finally starting to look better for him, until one day when he is out at sea, that fucker Godzilla shows up and destroys a nearby boat, killing loads of people.
You can't keep getting away with it!
This again reminds Shikishima of his guilt that he didn't stop Godzilla when he had the chance, and because of the trauma he has experienced, this makes him reluctant to embrace his new family as he still refuses to marry the woman he clearly is in love with and not accept the girl who is practically his daughter, all because he believes that he doesn't deserve to be happy. He keeps trying to move past his PTSD, but what do you know, that fucking bastard Godzilla shows up for a third time and nukes a city. Realising that he can no longer find peace until the monster is dead, he joins what is essentially a suicide mission led by a bunch of civilians in order to kill Godzilla. The people are forced to take measures into their own hands, as both the USA and the Soviets are currently engaged in a Cold War, and the Japanese government is censoring all news about Godzilla, willing to turn a blind eye to the situation.
Because they're assholes!
So Shikishima, alongside all of his friends, face Godzilla in a final battle in order to prevent him from taking Tokyo. I'm not going to spoil what happens next, as you should really watch it for yourself, but the film ends on a satisfying note. -1 is simply fantastic, and after watching this, is anybody really excited to watch Godzilla and Kong fight a bunch of random red monkeys that nobody gives a fuck about, and there aren't any stakes because neither character can be in any real danger because we all know they have to be in the next movie? Fuck that movie and watch -1 instead. It's being re-released in black and white, so why not? Enjoy a well-written drama with a strong plot and compelling characters, instead of a bloated CGI mess where nothing matters and the fights are shit. Anyway, that was my review of -1.
Awesome. Awesome to the max.